Welcome to Above Replacement Radio. I am your host, Chris Gianta. I might be becoming a bad baseball fan who can't enjoy the romantic things because of advanced statistics. 15 years from now, I want to be on the early baseball committee. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran.
I literally have the Fangraphs hoodie, the baseball reference t-shirt, just repping some stats, you know what I'm saying?
It's not necessarily Hall of Fame. It's not necessarily above average, but we can guarantee you we are better than just the standard replacement level college sophomore.
And welcome to Above Replacement Radio. We're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Gianta. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I am doing very well today. It's been a while since the last time we recorded. We've both been very busy. But you know what? I'm ready to get back into talking some baseball.
Yeah, there is
Chris,
always
Chris also experienced, real quick, Chris, you also experienced your first Cape Cod Baseball League action this past week. Your thoughts?
Cape Cod Baseball League. I mean, it's definitely a chill atmosphere, family atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have anything negative to say. The concessions, I was extremely impressed with the concessions. I'm not sure if that's the case for all 10 parks, but shout out to Bourne because I had 3 sausage and peppers and I was impressed with all of them. There's a reason I got 3. They were delicious. So shout out to the Bourne Braves for delivering on the concessions.
Yeah, no, I can absolutely speak on Bourne. Just coming through every time. Yeah, I mean, you always know what you're going to get with them, and they deliver every time. They have some of the strongest concessions, I think, in the CCBL, no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to see a guy throw 99. He didn't really know where it was going quite yet, but that was also cool. You don't
Yeah.
you don't really see that too often up close.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that was a good experience. I was in the Cape. That was my first Cape League game. But yeah, it's been I think 9 days since our last podcast, and there's always a general excitement that I have after a long time away to get back into
Yep.
things. And one thing that did happen, in a sort of controversial way, unfortunately, we were waiting on the 24th perfect game for 11 years, and on Wednesday night, or last Wednesday night, Domingo German delivered that with a perfect game with 9 strikeouts. It's just the way it happened, I guess.
Yeah. I know that there are certainly a lot of people in the baseball world, myself included, that were pretty unhappy with this. Domingo German, of course, has been previously suspended under the league's domestic violence policy for an incident that occurred allegedly in September of 2019. And I mean, I think it's also just the fact that we've been waiting 11 years for a perfect game. The last guy to do it was this universally beloved superstar pitcher at the time, Felix Hernandez. I think nobody really was upset by the fact that he was the last to do it, except for maybe some AL West fans, but that's a default. But the fact that we had to wait 11 years for someone like Domingo German, a guy that is not generally celebrated in baseball, and also not someone who is even particularly good. I mean, if you look at his last 4 starts, it's like 3 innings pitched, 5 earned runs, 4 innings pitched, 6 earned runs, perfect game, 3 innings pitched, 4 earned runs. Like it's truly it's like Philip Humber all over again. This time it's someone who is also not very much not celebrated as a person. That, and it was also done against the Oakland A's, a team that is actively trying to put the worst possible product on the field. Yeah, it is just very unfortunate. It was a great pitching performance nonetheless, but a lot of people have very mixed opinions on it. And yeah, I personally wish it could have been someone else. I wish it could have been Max Scherzer in 2015, but it didn't happen like that.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't really have any of the redeeming elements that most perfect games have. It wasn't you know, no matter what the potential of an underdog story it was it was counteracted tremendously by, all the unfortunate background story on the particular pitcher. Along with that, it wasn't really like, oh, this is a long time coming, because it's Domingo German. He's been like the Yankees' fifth starter for essentially like 25 years now, or at least that's what it seems like. Um, he's been sort of fighting for a spot in the rotation forever. Meanwhile, like, yeah, like Felix Hernandez, he had built a great resume up to the point of his perfect game. Randy Johnson back in 04, he did it at age 40 and like had many, many great pitching performances before that, and finally got his perfect game that year. Um,
Roy
and
Halladay.
yeah, Roy Halladay is a great example of that. And then like with Dallas Braden, that wasn't a long time coming, but that was a perfect story, on Mother's Day. After, losing his mother in high school, he throws a perfect game on Mother's Day in front of the Oakland crowd, his hometown team, as he grew up in Northern California, Stockton, California. That was a great story. So, when the 24th perfect game in history doesn't really fit any of those measures, it's pretty anticlimactic.
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah, I mean, I think most baseball fans, a lot of baseball fans, are just hoping another one gets thrown as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I will say, I'm very happy for Kyle Higashioka that he got to catch one. That's very cool for him. I have nothing against him whatsoever.
Yeah, no. World Baseball Classic legend. Um, so
Yes, Team USA legend.
and yeah, objectively, yes, you mentioned the great pitching performance, and yeah, objectively, it was a really good pitching performance. And to break that down, I mean, he allowed 18 batted balls, and only one, two, three, four, only four were in the sweet spot zone. That's, I think, 22%. League average is like 33%. He also only allowed three hard hit balls, and none of those hard hit balls were close to the sweet spot zone. They were ground outs. They were two ground outs and a high fly out. He only had one batted ball with an expected batting average above 500. So to break that down, it was objectively a great single game pitching performance. I'm not going to take that away from him, but
Yeah,
there are a lot of things, that a lot of people had a problem with, um, understandably so. But yeah, anything more before we want to move on to the next subject?
I don't really have anything else. I mean, I think, yeah, people have their mixed opinions. They're entitled to whatever it is. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think I personally, and I think a lot of people wish it was someone else that did it.
Yeah, I agree. There's many, 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 many great candidates out there. You think every 5 days there's a starter. Multiply that by 30 teams. There's 150 potential candidates. I know there are some,
Mm.
openers and whatnot, but over 100 great candidates. But anyway, uh, unfortunate news, sort of continuing to come out of Anaheim, but particularly one big piece of news. Mike Trout hit the 10-day IL with a broken hamate bone in his left wrist. He took a swing. It's kind of It's kind of weird to break a bone or fracture a bone in his swing. Or yeah, I believe it was a fracture, not a break. Uh, and yeah, Mike Trout is hitting the IL at a time where the Angels sort of need him. They're kind of struggling right now. To add to that, what did you take away from this injury news?
Yeah, it's really tough. The Angels have been struggling lately. I know they've lost, I think, like 10 of the last 14 or something like that. I don't know the exact number. But all these struggles have eventually culminated with Trout getting hurt. He's out for 4 to 8 weeks, which is luckily not that bad. I was ready to hear way worse because he did undergo surgery. Anthony Rendon also just went down again. I think that's like the fourth time this year. And Shohei Ohtani left a game with a bruise on his hand. Luckily, he's still in the lineup. He just can't pitch for a little bit. Luckily, this coincides with the All-Star break, so I think they're kind of minimizing how much they're missing Shohei at this time, which is very good. But I mean, yeah, Shohei, like the Angels had a very good run up until before these struggles, and it was literally Shohei Ohtani carrying the entire team, along with like Trout, Brandon Drury, and like a couple of others, Zach Neto before he went down. Yeah, it is really unfortunate because this did look like, I mean, it's still not over, obviously, but this year, this was looking pretty promising for the Angels. They were in a playoff spot around the All-Star break. Late May last year was when they started sinking below the ocean. But yeah, I mean, Neto was doing very well for them. He went down, like I said. Um, Trout is now down. Rendon is back down. Ohtani is a little bit down. They're going to need a lot of guys to start stepping up, specifically in that offense.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. Most of the time you can blame the Angels' struggles on, poor roster construction, not enough spending, blah blah blah. We've heard the story for the past, half decade ish, not surrounding Ohtani and Trout with the correct pieces. But this time it seems to be a matter of injury, more so than roster construction. There's a long list of guys on the injured list right now. Just looking at the Angels roster resource, Logan O'Hoppe has been out for a while. That was supposed to be their everyday starting catcher. As a rookie, he went down with shoulder surgery. Another catcher, Max Stassi, is down. As you mentioned, Zach Neto is on the IL. Brandon Drury, who is really turning it around this year, he hit the IL in the last week. Gio Urshela has been on the IL since June 15. And, Jose Suarez has been on the IL. Ben Joyce, who is a promising reliever, promising young reliever who has been, taking social media by storm with his great fastball. He's on the IL. Matt Moore is on the IL. He was doing great for them out of the pen. It's a real unfortunate circumstance. Hopefully for the Angels, this 4-day break that's coming up kind of helps reset them, but it can only do so much. And yeah, it's really unfortunate with all the injuries that they've faced, because a lot of the time that's not really to blame for the Angels' lack of success, but this time it is.
Yeah, it is just really unfortunate. Yeah, and it all kind of happened within like a 2-week span, really. Obviously, like the three main guys on the team, all within like 48 hours, all went down. Yeah, I don't know. This just sucks, but luckily there is still time. The Angels are only like a couple games out of both the AL West and the wild card. So nothing is over by any means, which is good.
Yeah, nothing's quite over. If you're an Angels fan, I do understand maybe a sense of alarmism of, maybe 3 weeks ago, it was a definite that the Angels were going to be buyers at the trade deadline. And we mentioned the trade deadline is going to be a little weird this year, especially with the lack of potential moving pieces. But it was kind of probably consensus 3 weeks ago that they'd be trying to add at the deadline. But with all these injuries and the Angels going in the wrong direction, I'm wondering how committed they're going to be to adding to the roster come July 31st.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be interesting. I feel like they have to buy at this point because, I mean, I feel like the general consensus is if they're not buying, they might be trading Shohei. Because I feel like you got to go all in on one side or the other because this has been such a make or break year for the Angels entirely. I would go in and buy because you know what? Like these guys are coming back. Mike Trout is going to be back. Anthony Rendon hopefully will be back. Zach Neto hopefully will be back. All the guys you just mentioned, Chris, like to my knowledge, I don't think any of them are out for the year. You might as well, when they come back, supply them with a better roster so they can make a push. That's what I would do personally.
Yeah, I agree with buying, particularly because the idea of trading Ohtani is extremely doubtful, according to a lot of the people with more inside info. I know I read an article on The Athletic yesterday, part of the wind-up notebook that they have with, partially written by Ken Rosenthal. And I think Rosenthal was expressing the idea that it's extreme. It's the idea of trading Ohtani is extremely doubtful because with with a trade, you're kind of cutting ties for a potential free agent signing, and it seems like the Angels are in on are going to be contenders to sign Ohtani, when he does become a free agent. So they're not going to trade him for something that is probably not going to be an exception, as exceptional a return as they deserve for Ohtani. So they're probably not going to end up trading Ohtani. So they should, potentially add around Ohtani, add around Trout. And when they come back, they'll have a more sufficient roster and potentially try and get that, 6th or 5th seed in the American League wild card.
Yep, I agree.
But yeah, it's unfortunate. Trout's out 4 to 8 weeks. Ohtani, I'm not too concerned about. It seemed like a blister / bruise issue, and he can still hit. So that's always good. That's the good thing about Ohtani. If he can't do one, he'll probably be able to do the other. That's pretty cool. And the Angels have lost 11 out of 15, unfortunately. But hopefully for them, they can redirect, maybe use this All-Star break as a little stopping point,
as a reset
for this bad trend. A team on a good trend, in fact, an exceptionally good trend, are the Atlanta Braves, who have won 25 out of 29, for overwhelmingly the best record in that span. I mean, what the Braves have been doing is unbelievable. It's not even that surprising, but I mean, when they're playing at this level, you really have to talk about them.
Yeah, I mean, this offense specifically has been absolutely destroying the ball over the last 29. 203 runs scored in 29 games. I feel like that's like pretty good.
Yeah, that's that's pretty exceptional right there.
Yeah, as a team, they are slashing 309, 371, 577 for a 400 WOBA and a 150 weighted runs created plus. They are absolutely destroying the ball on all fronts. It is basically a joke. It is absurd. What they are doing.
Yeah, on all fronts, of offense, they are absolutely, or on all fronts of offense at the plate, they are absolutely dominating. Because you mentioned that slash line, 309, 371, 577, 948. All those lead all of baseball in that span. And along with that, they have the lowest strikeout rate in baseball. In terms of how well they're hitting the ball, they have the highest average exit velocity in this span. They also have the highest barrel rate in this span. They have the highest expected numbers. I think in the entire slash line, I just looked there. They have the highest expected batting average. Not only are they hitting 309, but they're expected to hit 291, which is amazing. They're expected to slug 543, which is 60 points above the next expected slugging in that time span. And yeah, I mean, like, just up and down, it's been amazing. And it's, they've faced a mix of levels of teams. They've faced the Phillies, who are also doing well, and they've faced, I think they faced the Road Rockies, but they also faced like the Guardians most recently, who are typically a very good pitching staff. So, I mean, they're not doing it against all, when you're doing it in 29 games, it's not going to be against all last place teams. I mean, these are all, pretty, on average, like a pretty, mid-level or quality,
Yeah,
major league rosters.
the Braves have 8 hitters in this span that have at least 72 appearances and a weighted runs created plus above 140, including Ronald Acuna Jr., Michael Harris II, Ozzie Albies, Matt Olson, Sean Murphy, Travis d'Arnaud, Marcell Ozuna, and Eddie Rosario. That's nobody has been performing bad on offense that's gotten significant playing time, except for like if you want to count Orlando Arcia, who only has a 95 weighted runs created plus.
Yeah,
in his last 117 plate appearances.
Yeah, who started this year, or I think is continuing this year as the 9 hitter.
Yeah, who's also a starting all-star, like
Yeah,
deservingly so.
Your 9 hitting your 9 hitting shortstop is 5% below average offensively. Boo hoo.
Yeah, after you just let a $170 million shortstop walk.
Yeah, yeah.
Not to mention that part as well.
It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild what they've been able to do. You're and what you're seeing with this Braves lineup is its maximum potential, and its maximum potential
Mhm.
is extremely scary. They've had guys, in the past couple years, they've had guys on their upswings and guys on their downswings. Acuna was technically on a downswing last year. Matt Olson was not at his highest potential last year. Michael Harris earlier this year was at an extreme downturn, had like a low 500s OPS. Now all of them are performing at the level they should be or at a higher level than they should be, which is, I mean, extremely scary.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's pretty nuts.
It is it is extremely nuts. I mean, it seems like every game you're watching with the Braves, like there's a MLB highlight of someone hitting a home run in the first inning. Um, I know Matt Olson has
Well,
like
aren't they like particularly insane in the first inning?
oh yeah, they are. And Matt Olson is one of the perpetrators of that. I think he has, unless he added more, he has 10 first inning home runs, which is pretty wild. But yeah,
Yeah,
the Braves in the first inning are pretty crazy. I think Sarah Langs has tweeted about that.
obviously.
Obviously, she's the first on everything.
So the Braves in the first inning this year, as a team, they are hitting 345. What? And this is the whole year. They are hitting 345 as a team in the first inning. Nobody else has an average above 299. Quite literally, no one else is at the 300 mark. They have 29 home runs in the first inning. That is the most in baseball. They have a 1053 OPS, a 663 slugging, a 390 on base. All of those lead the majors. Yeah, they are absolutely out of their minds. A 177 weighted runs created plus. The next highest in the league is 146. Yeah, they are absolutely out of their minds in the first inning.
Yeah, they it's pretty unbelievable what they've been able to do to start the games and set the tone.
They
Also
have
just
91 first inning runs too. The next highest in the league is 67.
yeah, that's the average is more than a run a game in one inning.
That's
Yeah.
insane. That is
So
legitimately insane.
or technically if you allow one run to the Braves in the first inning, that brings their average down.
Yeah, you contain them pretty well.
Yeah. Um yeah, you're pretty lucky to get off that easy. Uh so yeah, the Braves are I mean, it's pretty wild what they've been able to do. They've, increased the gap in the NL East. Surprisingly enough, the Marlins are the team that's directly behind them still. Looks like they're 8 games up, um, which is pretty cool. And also, to further the praise of the Braves, they also have, I think, the fourth best ERA in this span. Their FIP is not up to par necessarily, but in terms of run prevention, they have been doing also pretty well with that, along with their extremely good offense. So there's
Mhm.
that as well, and they still have Max Fried coming off the IL soon, which will be a major added bonus, and who knows what they'll do with the deadline too. So
Yeah.
yeah, they project to be a very scary team, and also with the Dodgers and Padres, with the Dodgers and Padres not, dominating the way maybe they were necessarily expected to. I mean, I think the Braves are maybe becoming the team to beat in the National League right now.
They absolutely are. What are they, 58 and 28 right now?
Yeah,
Already 30 games over 500 before the All-Star break. Yeah, that's absolutely the team to beat.
and I think they've overtaken the Rays as the best record in MLB.
I would believe it. That makes sense to me. I know they just overtook them in MLB's power rankings as number one.
Yeah,
And yeah, no, they do indeed have a better record across the board than the Tampa Bay Rays.
right. Yeah, pretty wild, pretty wild. Just in general, always we kind of have to shout out Alex Anthopoulos and the roster construction here. Like the trades the trades he's been able to pull off with Olsen and Murphy, along with the great early contract signings of Albies and Acuna and all these guys, has contributed to what's a good team and what looks to continue to be a good team as time goes on.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
so So yeah, the Braves are the best team in baseball right now, overall, and especially over the last 29 games. Another team who's been doing really well, not going to be necessarily threatening the Braves in the NL East, but are really increasing their odds of getting another playoff chance and another shot, and a shot at, potentially going back to the World Series. Although we're talking extremes here in July, but a team that has kind of righted the ship is the Philadelphia Phillies, who have won 20 of their last, or I think 21 of their last 28 now, for the second best record in baseball. Of course, they're losing ground on the Braves, who have been doing better, but they are gaining ground in the playoff race. What have you been thinking about what the Phillies have been able to do?
So we just went off on the Braves offense for a while, and the Phillies pitching has been kind of just as good. They lead the league in pitching FWAR over the same span since June 3rd. And a lot of it has been specifically the rotation. Taijuan Walker, their big free agent signing, has actually been their best pitcher over his last 6 starts. He's 6-0 with a 1.62 ERA and a 2.91 FIP. That gives him a 1.3 FWAR. Zach Wheeler, always dependable. He's been excellent strikeout to walk ratio, 10.01 strikeouts per nine, 1.82 walks per nine, limited home run damage, a 3.34 ERA, and a 2.75 FIP. Ranger Suarez and Aaron Nola have also been fantastic, and Craig Kimbrell has found it again. 15.43 strikeouts per nine, 1.93 walks per nine, no home runs allowed, a FIP below 1. He's been fantastic as well. Bullpen's been fine. Starting rotation specifically has been fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at the contributors last night and seeing who was, making this run possible for the Phillies, this run where they're winning 21 out of 28. It was kind of surprising to see the contributors, and with Taijuan Walker being the head of that ship, Ranger Suarez also being a major factor, and Craig Kimbrell seemingly finding his, whether it be early 2021 self or 2017 self, he's or 2012 self. He seems to scatter success around sometimes, but finding that, which is really important for the Phillies, by the way, like him finding that is really important because the Phillies have had a long history of bullpen problems. So having a stopper at the end, if Kimbrell can continue that, that could potentially be big, especially in the playoffs. But yeah, like it's been sort of surprising some of the contributors that they've had, because it's not just Wheeler and Nola.
Yeah, no, I mean they've been a full team effort. The bullpen as well has been excellent. They do have a 16.7% home run to fly ball ratio, which isn't fantastic, but I mean they've had very excellent strikeout to walk numbers across the board. I mentioned Craig Kimbrell. He was the reliever of the month, I believe, in June. So, he's back on his usual stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's really been the pitching as a whole entirely.
Yeah, it's been the pitching, it's been a lot of run prevention. And one thing I did find a little bit surprising when I was looking at the Phillies was, a great ERA, lower than their FIP, which is not usually what's happening. The Phillies have been known to have a bad defense for the past essentially half decade, but in the month of June, the Phillies are +3 in outs above average. And if not to be that guy, but if you take away Kyle Schwarber, it's +10. It's just Kyle Schwarber shouldn't be in the outfield. It's just that Bryce Harper, um, Bryce Harper has to be a DH, so he can't play defense. So unfortunately they have to put Schwarber out there, who's been, he shouldn't be in the field, unfortunately. But when you take out Schwarber, in the month of June, they had a plus 10 outs above average. And to point out specific players, I need to get this list going. But yeah, specific players in the month of June: Bryson Stott had 4 outs above average. Cody Clemens had 2. Edmundo Sosa had 2, and Trey Turner also had 2 outs above average in the month of June. So, some things being cleaned up in Philadelphia, like defensively. You don't really, sometimes you could expect a pitching breakout from the team, but a defensive breakout, that's really surprising.
Yeah, no, a defensive one as well. We've talked a lot about it, like how pitching and specifically bullpen is normally the issue, but defense is even worse. But yeah, the fact that they've been excelling along with everything else, it almost feels like the offense has been like almost like the least contributive, which is weird, which is not even like a knock on the offense because they've still been very good. But you look at what the pitching has done as a whole, you look how much the defense has improved, and it really seems like they're putting it all together right now.
Yeah, they really are. They really are. They stand. If the season ended today, they would be in the playoffs as that 6th seed in the National League playoffs. Outlooking it, you have the Marlins, Dodgers, and Phillies have those wild card spots. You have the Brewers knocking at the door, and then the Mets and Padres are, you can't bank on it, but there is always potential for a resurgence with them. But the Phillies are, rising in the playoff ranks. I mean, they proved to be dangerous in the playoffs last year. What's the potential that they, make a serious run again?
I mean, the thing that we saw last year is as long as you get to the season, you have a shot, even if it's against a team that statistically should be a lot better than you. We saw the Phillies take down, the Braves and the Cardinals, 2 division champions last year. And they have the rotation and the pitching to do it, as we've seen in this last, month plus.
Right, exactly. And if this Taiwan Walker, if Taiwan Walker continues to, not continues to do this, like a sub 1 ERA, but continues to be a quality starting pitcher, I think that's a big step for the Phillies. Like, we all know about the success of Wheeler and Nola and how good they are. But last year, putting Suarez as a game 3 guy who has been improving, but putting Suarez as a game 3 guy and then Syndergaard as a game 4, it made things harder for the Phillies. If Walker can be that, close that gap between how good the number 2 and number 3 guys are, I think that puts the Phillies in a much better position. But yeah, I know I personally was kind of critical of that Taiwan Walker deal. I did not think he was worth the $18 million a year that they were giving him. However, he could prove me wrong here. And if he makes the Phillies 2-headed monster a 3-headed monster this year, or maybe a modified 3-headed monster, that makes the Phillies extremely dangerous. I mean, maybe put your hopes out for winning a best of 3 with them, because I mean, all 3 could be great weapons to have. We saw how dangerous they were in a best of 3 last year. It makes winning a short series against them very difficult, and it makes them a very dangerous wild card team.
Yep. It's exciting to see, like, even with the Braves being so far ahead, like the idea that the NL East could still be competitive, like, I think is pretty cool. That, not to even mention the Marlins, who just keep winning. They, found a way a couple of nights against, like last night against the Cardinals. They also beat them 15-0 the other day.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's funny because you look at the National League East, standings, and you see, Braves, Marlins, Phillies, Mets, and Nationals. And if you just swap the Marlins and Mets, it would make complete sense.
Mm-hmm.
But the the Marlins are the ones 13 games above 500, and the Mets are the ones 5 games below 500. That's baseball. That's why you play the games, as they say. But yeah. Anything more before we get into players to highlight?
No, that was all I had.
All right. Well, that does it for the news segments of today. We will now get into players to highlight, starting with highlighting players that have been doing particularly well over a span, or maybe potentially even over the whole year, or it's a subject that's doing particularly well. We forgot that we haven't done one this year, but we will probably get to that at some point. So now we get into our Thursday, July 6, 2023 edition of How About That?
He's striking out less, walking more, and he's also making better contact.
Turning into a strikeout machine just out of nowhere.
He's been excellent all around this year.
He is getting a
How About That?
That's right. For my How About That today, I am crossing another team off the list. We've talked a lot about this team lately, but we actually have not highlighted them on this segment. Talking about Spencer Steer from the Cincinnati Reds, because he's been raking for quite some time now, since May 21st. He is slashing 329, 425, 572 for a 998 OPS and a 162 weighted runs created plus. That weighted runs created plus ranks tied for 8th in the majors in this span. His OBP is 5th, and I believe his slugging is 11th. So he's been great all around. During the span, he has a 37.5% fly ball rate. That is the 12th highest among the 110 hitters with at least 100 batted balls. And he also has a 28.7% ground ball rate. That is tied for the lowest on that same list. So, I mean, playing in Cincinnati and having a lot of power, you want to maximize your fly ball potential. And that's exactly what Spencer Steer is doing. And it's no secret to see why he has these numbers. Before this span, his average launch angle on the season was 16. And in this span, it is 22 degrees. So he's lifting the ball a lot more, and obviously that's helping him out. Before the span, his K rate was 21.8%, and in the span, he has dropped it to 13.8%. And also 20.2% of his batted balls have been 0 degrees or lower. That is the 3rd lowest rate in the majors, behind only Eugenio Suarez and Mookie Betts. So Spencer Steer is striking out less. He is lifting the ball more in a hitter-friendly ballpark, and he is currently on pace to become the 4th Cincinnati Reds rookie to qualify with a 130 OPS plus or higher. The other 3 that have done it were 1956 Frank Robinson, 1926 Walter Christensen, and of course 1889 Bug Holiday, who did it in the American Association. And Spencer Steer is on pace to join that list right now.
Yeah, Spencer Steer.
How about that?
Yeah, that is a good analysis there. Like you mentioned, yeah, a team being crossed off the list. We've talked about them a lot, but yeah, they haven't graced the How About That segment quite yet. And yeah, with looking at How About That's trying to cross teams off the list, I also saw the trend there. And I also wanted to highlight Spencer Steer because yeah, I mean, we haven't talked about a Red yet, and it was time. And if you didn't pick him and I didn't pick him because I thought you were going to pick him, that would be a tough scene. So that's what we got to do. And luckily I picked a different span for Spencer Steer. I have some other stats to point out why he's been succeeding. So Spencer Steer he's been doing good long term, but also in his last 11 games, he is hitting 415 with a 1252 OPS. Out of 186 qualifiers in the span, his average ranks 5th, on base percentage ranks 1st, and OPS ranks 5th. Out of 154 hitters with 25 plus batted balls in the span, his expected WOBA ranks 12th. And his strikeout rate has gone from 18% before the span to 14% in the span, and his walk rate has gone from 10% to 18%. A lot of this has been due to him seeing better counts. He has gone from seeing 3-ball counts in 22% of his plate appearances to seeing them in 30% of his plate appearances in this span. Along with that, his sweet spot rate has gone from 35% to 47% in his last 11 games. and that sweet spot rate ranks 8th highest out of 154 in this span. Along with that, his barrel rate has gone from 6% all the way up to 12%, and his fly ball rate has gone from 31% to 41%. And sometimes that could be turned out that could be seen as maybe a bad thing, but he's hitting hard fly balls. His average exit velocity on fly balls has gone from 91.9 miles per hour to 93.8 miles per hour, and he's gone from pulling 31% of his fly balls to pulling 50% of his fly balls. And because of these factors, he is hitting 429 and slugging 1286 on fly balls in his last 11 games. So Spencer Steer from both of us getting a...
How about that?
Yeah,
well
deserved.
Well deserved.
The only teams left on the list are, we only have 4 left: the Mets, the Yankees, the Phillies, and the Cardinals.
Yeah, and as you mentioned a couple episodes ago,
3 of those teams I feel like have kind of undershot their expectations a little to this point. So the Phillies, I'd say, are right around par.
Yeah, it like you mentioned, it usually kind of makes sense. There usually is a correlation between team performance and the amount of how about that's we do, or the amount of slightly alarmings we do. Shout out to 2021 when we had 9 Padres slightly alarmings in one season. And I think last year the most slightly alarmings we did was like the White Sox. So there usually is correlation between, underperforming teams or overperforming teams and how many how about that's or slightly alarmings we do. But yeah, Spencer Steer, well deserved, good rookie. And he's doing extremely well. Now we go from the highs to the lows, where we're talking players or subjects that have been underperforming for our Thursday, July 6, 2023 edition of Slightly Alarming Statistics. He's been barreling up the ball way less.
He's not missing bats. He's not getting the ball on the ground, and people are hitting it in the air more.
It's been so bad. He is getting a...
Slightly alarming.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned teams that, have a lot of slightly alarming in a season because they underperform. This team, probably, I know we've done a couple this season. I feel like there could be more in the future if they continue to perform this way. Talking about Luis Castillo from the Seattle Mariners. He had a great start to the season, but he's really cooled off for a while now. Over his last 5 starts, he has a 4.25 ERA and a 6.39 FIP. He has been the worst qualifying pitcher in the majors over that span by F4, and that is due to his league-leading 2.73 home runs per 9. It's gone up almost 2 full home runs since before this span. Additionally, his walks per 9 before this span was 2.04, and in this span, it is 3.64. So he's walking about a guy and a half more per 9 innings in this span. Before this, his fly ball rate was 21.5%, and in the span, it is up to 32.9%. His ground ball rate has also gone from 43.1% to 37.8%. So Luis Castillo is, giving up a lot more balls in the air and a lot less on the ground. This is one that I found particularly interesting. Luis Castillo has 28 batted balls against his 4-seamer in the span, and 21 of them have been either fly balls or pop-ups. That is 75%. And he's allowed 3 home runs and a double, in that group. And only 3 of those 28 have been ground balls. That is 10.3%. And that is the 7th lowest among the 230 hitters with at least 10 batted balls against their 4-seamer. And to top it all off, opponents are also hitting 309 and slugging 588 against Castillo's other 3 pitches, which would be his sinker, his curveball, and his changeup. So Luis Castillo really has not had much working for him lately.
Luis Castillo.
Slightly alarming.
All right, much better. All right, so Luis Castillo, yeah, been giving up a lot of home runs, been giving up a lot more fly balls, and therefore also more home runs. So my slightly alarming comes from a team that we expected more out of, to go with the theme of that. My player comes from the Toronto Blue Jays. He's actually one of the offseason additions this team made. I'm talking about Dalton Varsho, who was in a trade for Lourdes Gurriel Jr. and Gabriel Moreno. traded from the Diamondbacks. Great defense, had some very good offense last year too, along with good base running. But in his last 13 games, he is hitting 163 with a 405 OPS. Out of 182 qualifiers in this span, his average is 7th lowest, on base percentage is 4th lowest, slugging is 3rd lowest, and OPS is 3rd lowest. And his expected numbers are actually worse than his actual numbers. He's hitting 163 with a 134 expected batting average, and out of 262 batters with 25 plus batted balls in this span, Dalton Varsho's expected batting average ranks 2nd worst, expected slugging ranks 3rd worst, and expected WOBA also ranks 2nd worst out of 262. And much of this has to do with an extreme rise in strikeout rate. His strikeout rate has gone from 20% before the span to 41% in this span. His strikeout rate is the 2nd highest out of 182 qualifiers in this span. Also, his whiff rate has gone from 23% to 36%. And out of 311 hitters with 50 plus swings in the span, his whiff rate ranks 25th highest. Along with that, in his last 13 games, he is hitting and slugging 118 on 4-seam fastballs. And his whiff rate on 4-seamers has gone from 22% to 41%. And out of 226 hitters with 25 plus swing, out of 226 hitters with 25 plus swings against 4-seamers in the span, his whiff rate on 4-seamers is 11th highest. That's top 5% whiff rate in the bad way. Along with that, his average exit velocity has gone from 85.9 miles per hour to 83.9 miles per hour. His sweet spot rate has gone from 38% to 28%. His line drive rate has gone from 25% to 16%. And on 25 batted balls, he also has 0 barrels. So nothing really going right for Dalton Varsho in his last 13 games. He's striking out much more because he is swinging and missing much more, and swinging and missing on 4-seam fastballs much more, at one of the worst rates in baseball. And he's hitting the ball softer and in less optimal spots of the launch angle spectrum. So Dalton Varsho getting a
Slightly alarming.
All right, so that should do it for players to highlight. Now we'll get into a little weekend of the preview of the weekend plus ahead-ish, as we are recording on Thursday. I will be looking at the series to watch. Daniel will be looking at the day-by-day pitching matchups to look at, as far as they're announced. And for series to watch, one that starts tonight, I believe, that is a 4-game series, is the Astros and Mariners. Mariners have been a struggling team. Astros are starting to get their feet under them. So, something to look out for. I think it's always pretty fun when those two teams match up. At least it's been that way for the past couple of years. And then as far as series that start tomorrow on Friday, you have the Dodgers and the Angels going at it. The Battle of Los Angeles there. Shout out to Rage Against the Machine, the Battle of Los Angeles. But yeah, the Dodgers and Angels are going at it. Should be a fun matchup, even without Trout and maybe even without Ohtani. Along with that, the Marlins and Phillies are going at it. Phillies, as we talked about, really, really hot. Marlins have been doing extremely well also overall in the season, as well as recently. And the premier series to watch, a series all baseball fans should have their eyes on, is on the 2 best teams in Major League Baseball as far as record goes. The Rays are hosting the Braves for a 3-game set at Tropicana Field. So that is the premier series to watch. Definitely keep your eyes on that one. What do you have for the day-by-day pitching matchups?
So today on Thursday, July 6th, this one kicks off in an hour or half an hour, but Mackenzie Gore is pitching for the Nationals against the Reds at Nationals Park. They're wrapping up that series today. All-star Michael Lorenzen will be going for the Detroit Tigers against the Oakland Athletics in Comerica Park.
Yeah.
You will have Jose Barrios and Lance Lynn facing each other in the first end of the. Are the Blue Jays and White Sox playing a doubleheader today? Because it says one game kicks off at 5:10 and one kicks off at 5:15.
Yeah, they got rained out yesterday. That's why I was able
Okay,
to get Varsho's stats yesterday.
fair enough. All right. Jack Flaherty and Yuri Perez are facing each other in Cardinals and Marlins in Miami. They're wrapping up that series today as well. Luis Severino will be pitching for the Yankees against Kyle Bradish of the Orioles. Tanner Bybee will be pitching for the Guardians against the Royals at home. Nathan Eovaldi will be making his return to Fenway Park, facing the Red Sox and Carter Crawford. I will be there tonight, so very excited to see that.
Yeah.
Very excited to hear all the takes from the fans around me.
Yeah.
Very much looking forward to that one. George Kirby will be facing the Astros for the Mariners. The Astros have yet to announce a starter. Carlos Carrasco and Ryan Nelson will face each other in Mets Diamondbacks in Arizona. Johan Oviedo and Julio Urias will face each other in Pirates and Dodgers. And matchup of the day comes from Cubs Brewers. It's Marcus Stroman versus Freddie Peralta.
Yeah, Marcus Stroman been one of the best run preventers of the last couple months.
Yeah. On Friday, Alek Manoah returns for the Blue Jays. Will be facing the Tigers in Comerica Park. Charlie Morton and Tyler Glasnow will face each other in Braves and Rays. You will have who else? I am going through these for the first time. Luis Castillo and Hunter Brown facing each other in Mariners Astros. I'm fully expecting Luis Castillo to give up 3 home runs that game because anytime any of my F4 pitchers face the Astros, it's a disaster. So I'm ready for that one. Andrew Abbott and Corbin Burns will face each other in Reds Brewers in Milwaukee. Andrew Abbott's been really exciting to watch these last few starts. Justin Verlander and Yu Darvish will face each other in Mets Padres. That is an awesome one. And matchup of the night comes from Phillies and Marlins in Miami. It's Zach Wheeler versus Sandy Alcantara.
That is a good one. That's a really good one.
Yeah. You're gonna want to watch that. On Saturday, you will have Kevin Gausman facing the Tigers for the Blue Jays in Comerica Park. Sonny Gray and Tyler Wells will face each other in Orioles Twins in Minnesota. Both of them have been excellent this year at run prevention. Specifically, Brady Singer and Gavin Williams will face each other in Royals Guardians in Cleveland. You will have Braxton Garrett and Ranger Suarez facing each other in Phillies Marlins in Miami. Framber Valdez will be facing the Mariners for the Astros in Houston. Reed Detmers will be facing the Dodgers for the Angels in the Freeway Series in Hollywood. Blake Snell will be facing the Mets for the Padres in San Diego. And a matchup of the night comes from Braves Rays. It is Spencer Strider versus Taj Bradley.
Couple young guns going at it.
Yeah, a couple of strikeout machines. And then on Sunday, not a whole lot is announced. Matchup of the day for now, I'll say either is Chris Bassett versus Tarek Skubal from Blue Jays Tigers. Skubal just came off the IL after getting Tommy John surgery. And Bryce Elder versus Zach Eflin in Braves Rays.
Yep. I had a random thought, but it's weird having 2 Spencer STs doing really well like at the same time. And I don't know. It's like you could start your sentence by like saying Spencer and then like and
like
you don't know what direction
2 roads here.
You still don't know.
Are we talking about a pitcher or are we talking about a hitter?
Yeah, it's confusing. But yeah, that was just a random thought. That should do it for this installment of Above Replacement Radio. Really good to get back on here after a 9-day layoff. Happy to talk about all the subjects that we missed out on. And that will do it. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and want to watch the conversation as it happens, or just check out the digital content, go to the YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio, and please subscribe to that YouTube channel. And if you're listening on YouTube and want to check out the audio-only platforms, go to Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Look up Above Replacement Radio. We'll be right there for you. And if you want to follow us on social media, follow me on Twitter at Chris_Gianta. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran, and maybe Threads?
Yeah, I was literally going to say follow me on Threads at Daniel_Curran.
Yeah. Because yeah, that's a new thing. It's got 10 million users already. So
Yeah.
yeah, follow him on those platforms and follow the show Instagram at Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. And we hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time where we will be talking all the happenings in Major League Baseball once again. See you then.
This conversation is over.